Ladies and gentlemen, if you've ever wondered what kind of music keeps a rock legend like Bob Seger grooving at the age of 80, buckle up, because the man behind Night Moves and old-time rock and roll just dropped a list that made classic rock fans spill their coffee in disbelief. That's right, after decades of dodging the question, the Detroit icon finally revealed his 7 favorite rock albums of all time. And let's just say it's not your average playlist for an 80-year-old grandpa. Instead of golden oldies or best of compilations, Seger's picks show a deep mix of grit, storytelling, and a dash of surprise. Some choices make total sense, others make you go, wait, Bob listens to that? This isn't just a list of records, it's like a peek inside the jukebox of his soul. And honestly, it's refreshing to see that even at 80, Seger's music taste still has more edge than most people's teenage playlists. So today, we're breaking down what's on that list, what each pick says about him, and why this revelation matters for every fan who ever sang along to Against the Wind with a beer in hand. Because when an old rock god speaks, you don't scroll past, you turn up the volume. The legacy and why this list matters. Before we dive into Bob Seger's 7 favorite rock albums, let's pause for a second and appreciate the man himself. Because we're talking about a living legend who's been rocking stages since bell-bottoms were considered formal wear. Seger isn't just another classic rocker with a nostalgia problem. He's the guy who defined American heartland rock. His songs like Night Moves and Turn the Page didn't just top charts, they became anthems for anyone who ever drove down a lonely highway questioning life choices. So, when this guy decides to finally reveal his all-time favorite albums at 80, it's not just trivia, it's like Picasso revealing which crayons inspired him. These albums shaped the way he wrote, performed, and even rebelled. It's also symbolic. At 80, when most people are arguing over blood pressure medicine brands, Seger's still talking about music that stirs the soul. This list isn't just about admiration, it's a reflection of his evolution as a musician and human being. And knowing Seger's history, there's no way this list is boring or predictable. In fact, I'd bet half the artists on it made him want to pick up his guitar, and the other half made him want to throw it across the room in awe. Album number 1, the one that started it all. The first album on Bob Seger's list is Highway 61 Revisited by Bob Dylan. And honestly, could there be a more poetic start? It's like Batman revealing his role model was another guy named Bob who also changed the world with words. Released in 1965, Dylan's masterpiece isn't just a collection of songs. It's a cultural earthquake that cracked open the walls of pop music and poured in poetry, rebellion, and a dash of chaos. For young Seger, who was just starting out in Detroit's gritty bar scene, Dylan's fearless lyricism was a lightning bolt moment, proof that storytelling could rock just as hard as guitar riffs. Reportedly, he once said, Dylan made words sound dangerous, and you can hear that influence in everything Seger wrote afterward, from Main Street to Turn the Page. It's not hard to imagine him sitting in his tiny apartment, needle dropping on Like a Rolling Stone, realizing he didn't have to sound perfect, he just had to sound real. And let's be honest, if you don't have Dylan somewhere in your rock inspiration list, are you even legally allowed to call yourself a songwriter? For Seger, Dylan wasn't just an influence. Album number 2, The Soul of Rock and Roll. For his second pick, Bob Seger threw us a curveball that hit straight in the feels, Born to Run by Bruce Springsteen. Now, if Dylan was his lyrical father figure, then Springsteen was the brother from another mother. Both blue-collar poets, both obsessed with cars, heartbreak, and late-night radio. Born to Run wasn't just an album, it was a cinematic explosion of hope and desperation packed into 8 songs that made even your average gas station clerk feel like a hero. Seger once said he admired Bruce for his energy, his storytelling, and his complete lack of fear when it came to emotional honesty. It makes sense. Both men built their careers on that everyman magic, singing about the people who work hard, love harder, and sometimes drink too much trying to forget it all. Listening to Born to Run probably reminded Seger of his own grind, endless tours, late-night gigs, and the feeling that maybe, just maybe, movie, the next show would change everything. It's poetic, really. Springsteen wrote about chasing dreams down the highway, and Seger wrote about what happens when you finally pull over. Two sides of the same rock and roll coin. And between us, it's nice to know even rock legends get emotional about other rock legends. Proof that no matter how old you get, there's always someone out there whose music makes you want to buy a leather jacket and believe again. Album number 3, The Detroit Connection and Raw Power. Now, this next pick feels like a love letter to his hometown's rough and tumble spirit. For his third favorite, Bob Seger went with Kick Out the Jams by the MC5, Detroit's own chaotic, rebellious noise machine that made the city's amplifiers shake back in 1969. If Dylan taught Seger to write from the heart, the MC5 taught him to sing from the gut. These guys were raw, loud, political, and unapologetically Detroit. Their energy wasn't polished, it was gasoline on fire, and that's exactly what Seger admired. He saw in them a mirror of the same working-class defiance he built his career on. You can almost picture a young Seger at a smoky club, watching Wayne Kramer shred on guitar while thinking, okay, so that's what rock and roll feels like. It wasn't about perfection, it was about power, freedom, and flipping off anyone who said rock had rules. That kind of energy seeped into Seger's DNA, influencing tracks like Ramblin' Gambling Man and Kathmandu. Both men came from the same city, the same blue-collar chaos, and shared the same message. Rock and roll isn't a product, it's a protest. And maybe that's why Kick Out the Jams still hits so hard today. It's proof that Detroit doesn't just build cars, it builds legends who know how to rev an audience's soul. Album number 4, The Heart and Harmony Influence. For his fourth pick, Bob Seger dialed the volume down a notch and went with Abbey Road by the Beatles, because apparently even a man known for old-time rock and roll enjoys a little harmony now and then. It's no secret that the Beatles influenced just about everyone who's ever held a guitar, but for Seger, Abbey Road was more than a soundtrack, it was a masterclass in musical storytelling. Released in 1969, the album blended blues, pop, and poetic experimentation into something timeless. Seger admired how each track flowed seamlessly into the next, like a musical movie where no one ever hits the fast-forward button. It inspired him to treat albums not just as collections of songs, but as emotional journeys. He once joked that listening to Abbey Road was like being in church, if church had electric guitars and better haircuts. From Come Together to the End, the Beatles showed him that rock could have brains and heart, structure and soul. It's easy to hear that influence in Seger's own music, the layered harmonies, the emotional buildups, the way every song feels like a chapter in a bigger story. So while Lennon and McCartney were busy rewriting music history, Seger was somewhere in Detroit taking notes and probably thinking, one day I'll make an album that feels this complete. Spoiler alert, he did. Album number 5, The Blue Soul That Shaped His Voice. For his fifth favorite, Bob Seger surprised absolutely no one who's ever heard that gravelly voice of his. He picked At Last by Etta James. Yup, you read that right. The man who gave us Hollywood Nights and Turn the Page has a soft spot for soulful heartbreak ballads. And honestly, it makes perfect sense. Seger has always had a bluesman's soul trapped inside a rocker's body, and Etta's 1960 classic is basically the holy grail of emotional power. Her voice drips with pain, love, and raw honesty, 3 things Seger built his entire career on. You can almost imagine him listening to I'd Rather Go Blind and nodding like, yup, that's how you tell the truth. Etta didn't just sing songs, she lived them, and that authenticity resonated deeply with Seger, who spent years singing about real people, real heartbreak, and real miles on the road. Plus, rumor has it that when he's offstage, Seger still throws this record on to reset his soul. And if that's true, someone please get that man a scented candle and a whiskey, because that's pure therapy. This pick shows that beneath all the roaring guitars and crowd-shaking anthems, Bob Seger is still that kid from Detroit who believes music isn't about perfection, it's about feeling something so deeply you can't help but sing it out loud. Album number 6, the modern pick that shocked everyone. Now here's where Bob Seger proves he's not stuck in the 70s like your uncle who still calls every playlist a mixtape. His 6th favorite rock album? Believe it or not, Wasting Light by Foo Fighters. Yup, Grandpa Seger listens to Dave Grohl, and that alone deserves a standing ovation. This 2011 album is raw, loud, and unapologetically analog, recorded entirely on tape with 0 digital shortcuts. When asked why he loved it, Seger reportedly said it reminded him of what rock should feel like: sweat, noise, and soul. That's classic Seger energy right there. The man respects any artist who still bleeds for their craft, and Foo Fighters embody that same old-school work ethic he built his career on. You can see why it struck a chord. Both Grohl and Seger survived fame, loss, and burnout, yet came back swinging harder each time. The humor here is that some fans couldn't believe an 80-year-old rock legend was blasting modern Foo Fighters instead of polishing his vinyl collection. But that's the thing about Seger. He's never been about nostalgia. He's about truth in sound. If it's loud, real, and makes your heart race like you just missed a highway exit, he's in. And honestly, imagining Bob Seger air guitaring to Rope is the mental image the world didn't know it needed. Album number 7, the one that defines him completely. Finally, the crown jewel of Bob Seger's list, Exile on Main State by the Rolling Stones. Now, if you've ever driven down a dusty road with your windows down and old-time rock and roll blaring, this pick makes total sense. Exile on Main State isn't just an album, it's a whole mood. Dirty, soulful, and beautifully imperfect, just like Seger's own catalog. Released in 1972, it was the Stones at their grittiest, writing songs in a French mansion that probably smelled like cigarette smoke and rebellion. For Seger, this record represented freedom, the kind that comes when you stop trying to please anyone and just play what feels right. Every track on Exile sounds like it was born in chaos, baptized in whiskey, and perfected by accident. That's exactly how Seger has always approached music: heart first, polish later. He once joked that he liked Exile because it sounded like real people making real music before breakfast, which honestly might be the best compliment a rock record can get. This album is everything Seger stands for: authenticity, soul, and that raw edge that can't be faked. It's poetic that his final pick is by the Rolling Stones, a band that, like him, just refuses to quit. At 80, Bob Seger isn't looking for shiny perfection. He's celebrating the mess, the magic, and the music that refuses to die. The wisdom of an 80-year-old rocker. So, what does Bob Seger's list of 7 favorite rock albums really tell us? Simple, that even after half a century in the game, the man's heart still beats to the sound of raw guitars and real emotion. His picks, from Dylan's lyrical fire to the Stones' chaotic swagger, aren't just records he enjoys, they're a reflection of his entire journey. These albums shaped him, challenged him, and reminded him that music isn't about fame, charts, or fancy remasters. It's about truth. And maybe that's the real wisdom of an 80-year-old rocker who's seen it all. Trends come and go, but authenticity never goes out of style. The funny thing is, while most people his age are arguing over whose turn it is to control the remote, Seger's still debating which version of Like a Rolling Stone sounds better on vinyl. That's the kind of passion that keeps legends alive. His list isn't just nostalgia, it's proof that rock and roll is a lifelong conversation between artists and fans, one guitar riff at a time. So if you ever find yourself wondering what to listen to on a long drive, take a page out of Bob's book, throw on one of his 7 picks, roll down the window, and remember what it feels like to believe in music again. Because as Seger himself might grin and say, you're never too old to crank it up one more time.